Hey everyone, I'm here with Sean Patrick of SomaLive Technologies, and we're going to be doing a deep dive interview podcast here with a lot of great questions on a unique piece of therapeutic technology. So thank you, Sean, for being with us today.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me, Alex.
What you created, and we'll dive into it in a second, is really so innovative and unique. I really felt like we need to sit down and talk about this for some time, cover a lot of questions, and call it a part one. We'll probably have a part two just to really thoroughly dive into this. And anybody that's, of course, watching this who has had this shared with them, you can always reach out to us, of course, anytime if you wanted to learn a little bit more about any one thing that's said. Because we only have so much time, and we're going to try to cover a lot of ground in this. But let's jump into it. Maybe we can just give a little quick backstory, like who you are and what you created and why.
Yeah, the quick one is a little bit more challenging, but effectively how I would start it would be to say that sound and music was always my refuge growing up. It was always the thing that I went to when I was having a hard time, and I came up in a really rough situational environment in my life. Lots of trauma, lots of challenge, addictions, things like that. And even lost a brother along the way, passed away. And so I was in a real rough state. And I had an experience performing music on stage one time where I had this cathartic release of pent-up emotional energy. And I get chills just talking about it every time I bring up the story. And I didn't know what happened to me. I couldn't place it. So I went and started looking into this idea of how does sound affect well-being, and I discovered this whole world of sound healing and therapies and things like that. And so I started studying. This was 18 years ago. And I started developing different types of products, different pieces. I worked as a practitioner, learning all these skills. And along the way, I started having these flashes of this idea for this device called the Z5. I didn't have a name for it at the time, but I started to see these pieces come together in my consciousness. And I went through one final kind of heartbreaking experience about 5 years ago. And from that experience, I walked out into the woods and just opened myself to what my life's not going the way I thought it was going to go. What am I supposed to do? And that was the first time that all the pieces came together and just dropped in. Just a lightning bolt came through. And so I went home that day and started drawing up the first designs for the Z5, what is now the Z5 experience. And that was the beginning of this mission. And I've been working on it every single day ever since then.
Wow, I love that. And people are wondering, like, the Z5, what is this thing? What does it look like? I'm just going to briefly pull up here a picture right off of Sean's website. So let's do that here. All right. So can you see that?
Yes, now it's
Okay.
sharing. Yeah.
Perfect. See, we're doing a little zoom in here right off the control panel, but that's it right here. Here's a nice shot.
Yeah, that's the Z5. So you'll see here it's in zero gravity position, true zero gravity, based on the exact dimensions that were put forth by NASA. And it's fully adjustable. So you'll see this whole back portion is lifted up. That's adjusted by the touch of a button, which you'll see here in a moment. And then so is the foot side. So it'll match any body length. There's the buttons right there. And you'll see that there's 5 different zones of vibrational stimulus underneath. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the feet is 5. And then there's a 6th zone on top. And so we have a full touchscreen experience. You get a full immersive experience of having your entire body vibrated with these specific frequencies and music to induce these healing states, basically to reproduce the experience that I had organically and cathartically those many years ago.
Got it. Okay. All right. So now we're going to dive into a little bit more of the meat and potatoes, the more of the technical aspect of this. The first impressions when they come across your equipment is, first one, it's gorgeous. Honestly, the video doesn't really do it justice. It's really just it looks like a very luxurious, beautiful piece of furniture. And I want to make sure that we clearly get into now how your technology is different than what else is out there. Because when we mention the term vibration, right, then somebody might be thinking, oh, okay, I think maybe I saw something. It was like a vibroacoustic sort of thing that you lay down on or whatever, like a zero gravity chair. This might be vibroacoustic. For those of you who aren't aware of vibroacoustic therapy, we will obviously get into that in this video. But I want to make a very clear distinction and get very granular about how what you created is actually different than what else is out there on the market. You mentioned 5 independent transducers. Most people probably don't know what that term transducer is. We can get into that too. First off, can you walk us through just what those are and how they help with the therapeutic experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Because I speak these terms, I throw them around, and sometimes I forget that these may be new terms for people. So when I say transducer, what I specifically mean is a tactile transducer. So what we're doing is we're taking an audio signal, a pure audio signal, and we're transducing it into a vibrational signal. So when you're laying on the unit, it's like laying on a speaker. So it's not subtle. We're not talking about something like, oh, it's energetic. It's like your body is being vibrated with these sound waves. So that's where the tactile transducer comes in. And the difference with ours as it relates to other products, what we saw in the market, and what I've been studying this for years, the idea of vibroacoustics has been around a long time. But what I had seen is twofold. One is it had been relegated into either the super woo-woo space, which is great. I love it. I consider myself to be one woo. And what I saw on the other side of the scope was it was like this nice to have additional piece. But what I know to be true is that the foundation of everything that we know and experience in this life is founded on frequency and vibration. So if we realize that, and we realize the awesome magnitude of that statement, then we realize that when we can manipulate using these vibrational frequencies, then we can actually touch the building blocks of creation within the human organism. Furthermore, we actually want to use that more strategically. So we wanted to create something where we focalized somatic sound therapy and pull it out of just sound healing or relaxation, but realize that there's a deeply therapeutic potentiality that emerges given the states of consciousness and being that we enter into when we're in these vibroacoustic experiences. We wanted to create something that was a much more luxurious, higher end, something that instead of focusing on how to make it as cheap as possible, we wanted to make it as solid and good as possible, how make the performance of the unit even better. So we use very high level tactile transducers. They're much wider frequency range than most of the things that you get in other devices. And instead of it being just an add-on, it's the focal point. So having the individual transducers that can be modulated in real time, or modulated individually rather, we can focus on certain parts of the body. We can create movement through the body. We can serve the experience at a deeper level and invite people to use that somatic opening to drop into deeper states of themselves in terms of relaxation and recovery.
Got it. Wow. Very interesting. And so let's even take it like a little bit further too there, because now we're getting to, first off, I want to just back up a second and probably be a very brief summary. So again, you will see that term transducers out there in, say, this modality or realm of the vibroacoustic. And can you go back again and just touch on what you're doing a little bit differently with your transducers in terms of their transducers that you might see out there?
Yes. Yeah, thanks for asking. My biggest thing is that we are focused on using very high quality transducers. And that might not seem like much to somebody, but for somebody that understands audio, for instance, you can have a set of speakers that cost you $100. There's studio monitors that cost $150,000. And there's a reason they're that expensive. The quality of the experience is so much higher. So first off, we're using higher quality transducers to begin with. We are also, because of the way that we've dialed in the software, we have separated the frequency ranges that you hear in the headphones versus what you're feeling in your body. So we have fine-tuned the physical experience to be only the lower end that we can really focus in on, instead of overstimulating the body with the full frequency experience that you usually get in a lot of these other ones. They're usually in stereo. It's the full frequency experience. You're getting all the information, and it's actually it can be a little chaotic for the body. So we're actually separating those and sending the low frequency signal through just the body, and then the headphones are the full frequency.
Got it. That is very different. I want to circle back to that too, in terms of different therapeutic goals and why that may be helpful. But let's circle back to that because we'll get a little bit more into that subject in a second. Thank you for that. I know I had read somewhere on your website that you have proprietary music and like sonic architecture. Can you explain a little bit more like the sound composition difference from like regular music or therapeutic audios that are out there? Is this like frequency specific binaural, something else? When it comes to just audios and that kind of stuff, you'll see all kinds of different companies that have, you know, therapeutic audios that do different things that are considered like sound healing or whatever for the brain of the body.
Yeah, our primary thing is you can't find these tracks anywhere else. We developed them specifically for the Z5. The Z5 is also developed in such a way that the only music that you can play through it is music that we have specifically designed. Okay. So we have our own kind of library, ever expanding. We do use frequency specific audio. We use binaural beats. We use a lot of the standard pieces. But I think the big difference is that we take it a step further. So there's, on one side, you have relaxing music, right? Spa music, let's say. Very cool, sounds nice, everybody likes it. And then on the other side, you have this real deep, like deductive process of finding what is the frequency that does this thing. Well, the challenge there is that each body is a little different. Each person's frequency range is a little different. So you might have a frequency that does something for most people, but not everybody. What I found in my studies and explorations was there's actually about 12 or 13 different dynamics in music and sound that alter our state, either somatically, consciously, mentally, emotionally, whatever it is. Things like melody, tempo, rise and fall, attack, release, these kind of pieces that mean something deeper, because we wanted to stop looking at the human organism as a machine that has, let's change the oil, so to speak, but realize that we're talking about, this is why we call our company SomaLive, because we're talking about the consciousness that exists. And that consciousness is impacted by the holistic approach to the music. So we're creating melodic experiences, activations, different pieces that access different parts of consciousness as well as within the body. So it's a mixture of, what I like to say is we're mixing the science and the art, and we're putting them together, and we're creating experiences that I find to be my favorite, but I'm biased, most profound kind of experiences that I've had in the sonic realm as it relates to these things.
Wow, so interesting. And then as far as that experience of these different tracks, things like that, I'm curious, like how customizable is like the audio experience? In other words, can a practitioner adjust frequency or intensity level or session duration based on an individual client's needs, or is it like a standardized protocol that has been preset, in other words?
Yeah, so our current delivery model is preset experiences. The one thing that you can do is create playlists, and we've created a part of our software. You can create a queue of tracks. We wanted to make it as simple as possible early on. Now we are developing some other ways to make real-time adjustments or different tracks at different lengths, but currently our tracks are all 15 minutes long. And we find that to be like the sweet spot for accessing the opportunity that comes with this, where you can actually drop into these parasympathetic states and relax. 15 minutes does the trick. But if you want to go deeper, if you want to go into a really deeply, almost liminal space, then longer experiences will work better for that. So we set it up 15, you can do 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45, etc. You can set a playlist of those tracks. So none of the tracks you can't really modulate that in real time. But what is also exciting about the music, in my mind, is that we have a really wide variety of styles. It's not necessarily what you might expect. Some of it is much more exotic. Some tracks have natural acoustic style instruments. Some of them have voice. Some of them are very electronic based. We're at a time in our kind of technological development where we have access to electronic based music creation, and we can do so much more with that. We can start modulating frequencies down to the finest little amount and play with those in ways that the body will respond to, because that's what we experience out in the world. We don't experience pure frequency in the world. We experience modulations and interactions and synergies between frequencies. And I think that's where the magic is. So that's what we really focus on, is the ability to create a wide variety of experiences. And you might find that you relate or have a deeper sense or feeling experience with certain styles. And then we create more of the customization has to do more with our partnerships with the companies that are purchasing the units and getting involved with this movement. We like to get feedback from them about what kind of experiences they want for their clients. We want to know what are the results that they're after for their clients, and then we go back to the drawing board and we build tracks for that and then introduce them into the market. And sometimes we can do that custom for a specific company. It's a whole different animal that becomes their own listing of tracks. But primarily speaking, we want to know how we can better serve. And this is ultimately the goal here. We want to better understand as we go down this pathway, how does this certain pieces of music or certain movements within music impact the nervous system on a measurable level, and then how can we start to redevelop our tracks to further increase those impacts and maybe even get to a place where we're doing that in real time.
Very interesting. And I love too that you're just responsive. I guess the way you're growing is, of course, listening to what people need, what they want from a practitioner or therapeutic standpoint, which is exciting because you can introduce something, and then again, you're being in the role of a true facilitator, and it's really a listening process, both in people using this, but also in how you're growing and innovating it in real time. And then let's just round that out too. So if somebody invested in this, that could hypothetically really mean, or just quite literally, that this piece of equipment can continue to grow with that practitioner or that user. In other words, as you have new programming with new tracks and things like that, should just be, I'm assuming, an upgrade away to integrate it in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the joy of it. Like when you purchase a certain type of technology, for instance, that's the technology. You purchase a red light, there it is. You purchase a cold plunge, there it is. With ours, we are constantly innovating on the content side. So the experience, I often say that the Z5 itself is the finite piece of what you're engaging with. Whereas the sonic experience, the architecture, the tracks, that's infinite. We could go anywhere with that, and we will continue to go anywhere. And so with the basic subscription model, because it's a purchase with a little bit of a subscription model, pretty nominal, you continue to be fed new tracks. Now we do have some advanced kind of software things in the works that we want to do, and those will roll out in a different form. But for now, what it is are these tracks will continually be delivered as long as you're part of that subscription model.
I love that. That's super exciting. Yeah, I advise on so many different modalities and products out there, and you're so spot on. The majority of things is once you invest in it, like it's going to do what it's going to do, and it's not going to change. So it's going to be putting out the same thing, and that's 95% of what's out there. Yeah, and the thing is, we always learn new things too, right? I'm sure in 10 years from now, we'll learn some crazy things about sound and vibration, and hopefully we'll see that in mainstream medicine and all these things we hope for. But that'll give us some ability to upgrade and bring that into this technology, your equipment, as we learn those things. Let's dive a little bit deeper into just, the physiological mechanisms of, again, what's like really happening here, because you mentioned a few things. Maybe we can just touch on the parasympathetic state, how that plays a role with this, subconscious reprogramming, and also just like literally physiologically, how this kind of shift is actually occurring. Is it like cellular resonance? Is it nervous system entrainment? So if you can just speak on all that, and in terms of how that's related with the Z5 experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Effectively, most of us are living in a sympathetic state. That's by and large, I would easily cast that at 90% of us are living day to day in a sympathetic state. And what that means is we're in activation mode, we're in stress. And I don't think that by and large, the populace realizes how detrimental that is to our overall well-being. You can take all the nutrients and supplements you want. If you're living in a constant chronic stress state, your health is going to decline. And so to downregulate the sympathetic and upregulate the parasympathetic, that's where the gold is. And I believe personally, that's 50% of chronic illnesses and unwellness will be eradicated with just that move alone. You mentioned things like cellular resonance and things like this. It's absolutely happening on that level. We're literally vibrating the entire body. Now, I could get really out there with some of this stuff, but maybe we'll keep it simple right now. What we know is there's a reason that we feel good when we hum. Even if we just close our mouth and hum internally, it's massaging the inside of our body. There's a way that's rippling out these sound waves throughout our soma, and we can feel that that immediate kind of drop. I used to do it with my cat all the time. When he would be really frantic, I would grab him and put him on my chest and just speak really deeply, and he would just drop into this state. And that happens with babies, it happens with adults, it happens with everybody. We all drop into that state of the calm, relaxed, open vibration when we're being massaged in those ways. We have done studies. We did a study with Amherst College, just to touch on this real quick on the science side of it. We did a study with Amherst College. We had self-reported reduction of stress of 50% within 15 minutes across the students that we did this test with. Now, 50% reduction in stress in 15 minutes, that's not bad. I can go with that. What we found when we started doing case studies where we were actually trying to find the biometrics that showed this is that effect actually took place within 5 minutes. So we could see the markers of parasympathetic activation occurring within 5 minutes. And we have a couple of very high level scientists and people involved as advisors and board members who have been blown away by how effective our device is as compared to a lot of the others on the market. Now, I haven't seen their results, but I do know that I've seen the results within our own studies, and it's remarkable to see what's occurring. And we're still growing in that technology of understanding how is this actually happening. Again, I come back to what are the specific mechanisms that are addressing this, and how can we amplify those even more? And that's what we continue to study and grow into.
Yeah. And I also just love too that what you've created is for everybody. You know what I mean? It's not like there's no age restriction, no condition, no specific. It's just anybody in a human body. You
Absolutely.
Know, this is appropriate for.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
It is for everybody. And the stress levels, again, are on its own. I wanted to touch, if you wanted me to go further, the one thing I didn't mention about that was the subconscious reprogramming.
Yeah.
Would you like me to share a little bit about that, or
absolutely? Yeah, no, for sure. It's 100% interconnected. Yeah.
Great. What I want to say about that is we have different levels. So we have the Z5 experience, and we have different levels of training depending on what a facility wants to enact in their, and what works for their model, what they're really doing. On the technician level, it's a lot of what we're talking about. You get on the unit, you have these experiences where you downregulate the nervous system. It's great. It's very effective. But what I started to see was that moment where we downregulate into that state, we're in this liminal brainwave state, and we're also in this very calm parasympathetic state. That's actually a moment of an opportunity for us to do deeper, actual transformational work. Not just bring us back to baseline, but let's do something with that. And that's where I developed the practitioner program and the advanced practitioner program, where you actually you take the client through a specific kind of therapeutic or coaching, let's call it a coaching model, and you invite them to use that moment as a deep opportunity for transforming basically the limiting belief stories that we all hold somewhere deep down. And it's not in our minds, it's oftentimes inside of our bodies. And that's why we're utilizing the opportunity to bring mind, body, and spirit kind of all together for something that reprograms these pieces in a very conscious and active way. So it's not so much just a passive experience of, I'm going to lay and have this experience. You become an active participant in your own transformation.
Wow, beautiful. And I appreciate the research side to that too, because you really have to make sure that the body and brain is receptive in many different ways for deep shifts to actually happen. And I find in just consulting with a lot of wellness facilities that are not really addressing what we talked about before, the sympathetic overdrive, parasympathetic. People will be coming in there for various therapies or treatments or whatever it is really, but they never quite make that shift, right? They're still stuck in that same gear of sympathetic at varying levels. And that's where they are when they leave too, right? So it's how productive can we be in somebody's transformation if they're still locked in that same state? And I like, again, that you have the research where you know exactly what's going to happen to most people within a certain time frame. And I think that's really important. So anytime somebody comes in, they can have a consistent experience of actually making that shift out of being stuck in sympathetic and then being receptive as well. And that's just, I think, another thing that probably all practitioners, therapists, facilitators find frustrating to a certain degree sometimes is just the degree of how receptive somebody really is. Sometimes
Absolutely.
there's a bit of that wall, it's hard to break through. And let's put it this way, if you're not a therapist per se or in that field, and a lot of people aren't, they
Right.
still help people with their health, but they're not technically that world of psychology and that sort of stuff. It's not always appropriate, or these practitioners aren't always comfortable saying, you know what, hey, you came in for X, Y, and Z in your health, but let's take a deep dive right into your
Right.
personal life of emotions and mental. That person doesn't have to be a psychotherapist.
Exactly.
They don't have to talk to somebody about, hey, tell me what happened with your father when you were 5. You don't have to get into that, or let's talk about changing your lifestyle because you're stressed all the time. It's something that is so intimately personal between the user of the Z5 and their internal world.
Yes.
And then it's a self-transformation. So I like that it's very few and far between to come across a therapeutic sort of equipment where really it's going to be the client, the user, who's going to actually walk themselves through the healing process.
Yes.
As long as they're willing to be receptive, as we talked about before, and be open. Let's dive into a little bit to something you said too about how this kind of is the way that it's working on kind of a vibrational cellular resonance system. Just to make this perfectly clear for everybody, this is something that when somebody gets on this, it's not localized to affecting a specific part of somebody's body per se. It's something that is going to be really a systemic sort of therapy. In other words, we're going to see effects circulatory, lymphatic, muscle tension,
Yeah.
brainwave patterns. Is that correct? It's just really all encompassing.
Absolutely. We consider it's a fully immersive experience. That's the best way to describe it. So we are affecting across the whole system and the whole gamut of systems within the human organism, the human being. And there is focalized aspects to it. The whole time you're getting an entire full body experience, and then there might be focalized things. What I often say is that vibrational energy is adaptogenic. So what we notice is two people can have the same experience, the same track, for instance. They'll have the same experience and they'll feel it and experience it in different places in their body. They might experience it in certain parts more than others, whereas the other person, they didn't even notice it there. And I believe that has to do with where it's going to do the work. Because we're working on not just a physical level, but an energetic level. So if we think about things like acupuncture, for instance, we're talking about energy meridians, right? And unwellness is the lack of flow through those energy meridians. So in a certain sense, what we're doing is we're sending frequency energy through there, and it's going where it needs to go. And we even as the creators don't always get to know exactly what that is, because this is still a developing field. We know that it's doing positive work and there's zero side effects, which is awesome. But we don't always know exactly what it's going to do for the person, but we do know that it's creating transformation. And when those things are happening, I might add, that is when the memories or the ideas, like if you're doing a deeper therapeutic work, right? Because you can do this again as a basic relaxation, and that's huge. I'm not downplaying the value of that, but I am saying there's all this scale and degree of potentiality for using this as a tool for transformation. It's in those moments when that energy opening is flowing again, that the reason it wasn't flowing usually comes into consciousness, usually through a memory or a feeling or a sensation. Something emerges there to show us what we need to address. And like you said, the person has to be, in order to get the most value out of it, they have to be available to explore that on a deeper level.
Got it. And again, as a longtime researcher of wellness technologies and things like that, there's not many things really that you could say have a truly systemic effect on the body. They're going to directly or indirectly affect every part of the body. And that's why I think, yeah, something like this is such a complement, an adjunct therapy, however you want to put it, or that even that baseline foundational therapy. It depends on how we're looking at it and the context. I'm sure you would then agree that this is going to be something that is perfectly complementary to just about any other wellness protocol or modality.
Yeah, I love you bringing that up because I get really excited about this. It's both. It's like of course, we're talking a lot about this as a standalone powerful therapy, but when you start to add it, you mentioned earlier about maybe a therapist or another practitioner getting a little frustrated because they're using all their chops and the transformation isn't really occurring, maybe perhaps at the rate that they would want it to, let's say.
Sure.
But when you use something like the Z5 before or after or both of another type of therapy, what you're doing is basically lubricating the pathway. And we've gotten reports of people saying that the Z5 was the thing that opened them up to receiving the other modalities in certain clinics. So that it's the thing that they thought they weren't able to be healed. But the Z5 shifted that for them. And then all of a sudden, all the other things that they were doing in this clinic, including the Z5, the uptake increased and suddenly their transformation occurred. But it was the Z5 that kind of opened that doorway for them. And I believe that to be true in a lot of ways. So I think that it's a both. It can be its standalone, it can be a focused therapeutic kind of piece, and it can also be a complement to so many other things. And just deepen that. I always think about, like, in the therapeutic space, if you go into a therapy session, let's say you're doing it in person, and you drive through traffic and you get there and you're running a little late, so you got to get in there and you got to have your water and you're a little frazzled, right? You're going to spend the first, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes just trying to get down to a calm state maybe. And now you're talking about things that are actually activating your nervous system a little more. So maybe you get to the good stuff at 55 minutes and then the session's over. Right. Alternatively, why don't we bring a person in and put them on the Z5 immediately for 15 minutes right before the session? They float into that session, available to explore on a deeper level. Their body and their nervous system is ready to open up and go into that deeper path. So now you have a full hour of that work to really transform that person. Hey, maybe you do another session afterwards just to smooth it back over, because maybe we've opened up some can of worms that need a little bit of smoothing before you go back into your day.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if a lot of just wellness spaces and businesses probably have a decompression and a reset for their clients that they first start working with for a period of time before they even introduce anything else. As you said, like a baseline, but even more than that, right? Because a lot of people haven't even experienced what a healthy baseline is.
Exactly.
They think they've returned to baseline, but that's like their stressed baseline. You know?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dive into, because not everybody can just experience this. You might be excited about this and be like, oh my gosh, I want to do this right now. And you might have to do a little traveling to go try one and experience it. So let's talk a little bit about what the experience side of this is, to give people a sense of that. So let's start super basic. Somebody's laying on this. Is it like a massage-like sensation, a musical vibration? What's the stimulation like? Is it subtle, or is it like pronounced vibrations?
Yeah, good questions. For a long time, the best way that I could describe it to somebody, and we know it's a very experiential thing in a lot of ways. You have to feel it to really understand. So we do our best with language. In general, that's true. Yeah. What I used to say is it's like being massaged with sound waves. So it is massaging in like the vibrational sense, but it's not like kneading. You might lay on a massage chair and it's like pushing on you. It's not like that. And it's also not subtle. Oftentimes when people have their initial experience, they'll either smile or they'll vocally say out loud, wow, because they just didn't know what to expect. And the closest way that I can put it is if you've ever had a friend or yourself got really into car audio and you love subwoofers and you love the boom and you could feel that vibration, that is similar to what you're going to experience, except for it's therapeutic sound, not punches and bangs. But it is like, if you can imagine what it's like to lay on a subwoofer, so to speak, that massaging sensation. Or the other kind of natural way to do it that's still much more subtle is something I mentioned earlier, which is like closing the mouth and just humming in a deep tone as much as you can. You feel this vibration through your body. And it's similar to that, but again, much more pronounced. So I like to say it's not subtle, that's for sure.
Something popped into my head about how when the body, brain, mind, whatever, it has new experiences, when you have a new experience, the brain goes into a neurogenic state. It would be a new experience for somebody to have this. I have no doubt that would put them in a very strong neurogenic state, because there's just so many new sensations. So this is going to be something genuinely brand new for their body to go through. And thus their brain will probably have to really interpret just a lot of new stimuli and perception. And I can already see how that even just lends itself to the neuroplasticity and the ability to change in that moment. And then in terms of the client experience, what you've shared a little bit about what they report after a session. What have you heard in terms of feedback about hours or days later? And also, have you found like the effects are cumulative? Yeah.
Yeah, so far what we have seen, and to be fair, we haven't done any like really longitudinal studies, like scientific studies, but anecdotally what we're hearing is that, for instance, on a physical level, so people will come in with chronic pain, something they've been experiencing for a long time. And I've heard reports of people that have been experiencing, say, a neck pain for a long time. 3 weeks later, it was gone within 15 minutes. During that one 15-minute session, is still gone 3 weeks later. So we do know that there's a cumulative effect even off of one session, but we also suggest that people keep coming regularly. And what we see happening in that regularity is that their threshold for stress, I guess you could say whether you say it drops or falls, effectively what it means is like their stress resilience increases. So they become less impacted by their day-to-day stress because they're retraining. You mentioned earlier, people maybe their baseline might still be a stress state, right? We're retraining that baseline to drop into a state where it's, no, this is actually baseline. And not only is this baseline, but I'm actually able to hold that baseline in traffic or when my boss is griping at me or whatever it is, whatever the stressors of our daily life is. When we consistently retrain a new pattern, then we start to see that pattern starts to take more root and hold itself. So we see this accumulating over time a lot in the stress resilience kind of space primarily.
I like with this that most people are, majority anyways, I feel are generally in tune with things that challenge them mentally, emotionally. They're in tune with, am I stressed now or am I not stressed now? Again, there is a certain percentage that are just really disconnected from the body and not really aware of how they're actually feeling about something. But I feel like most people have enough self-awareness to a degree where really just any practitioner or individual can definitely get a clear sense just simply through questions and assessment form, things like that, and track really how things are progressing inside of themselves and in their life and in their well-being. Is there, just out of curiosity, it's probably something easy to make up if you don't have this, but do you have ever have an assessment form so that practitioners or whoever can offer questions and things like that to track their customers or their clients or their patients, their progress?
Yeah, absolutely. We have our forms that are our standards that we used all the way back from the study that we did with Amherst, kind of Likert style. So a scale of 1 to 6. What are you feeling on these different dimensions of self, be it physical, emotional, mental? And that is a really good way to track over time. And so we have those in paper form right now. We ultimately actually want to be building profiling into the software where people can actually have a data collection of their own experience over time. So they can actually begin to see their arc of improvement within their own profile of the software. It's something that's in development. It's not where we are right now, but we do want to be able to, I think it's important for us to be able to, it's like the only things that improve are the things that we measure. That's ultimately, that's how we see it. And that's how we stick with something. We have to measure it. We have to see the change. So it does help a lot to have those. And we do offer those to practitioners or facilities that want that extra added piece of service. And I think ultimately for, say, like a business owner, if they can show even through a self-reported model that their clients are improving based on the use of certain technologies, that's going to amplify their desire to keep using them.
And of course, obviously, all that helps fine tune and improve this E5 over time as well. Contraindications with anything like this, I'm assuming probably not.
The only thing that we are a little sheepish about, let's say, is something like a pacemaker. Though that's the only place where we don't have data, but that's the only place where we feel a little bit of risk or concern. So that's the one thing that we recommend not pairing with until we have more data. That's the one place that we want to protect. Other than that, there's nothing that we really know of that is concerning at all.
Yeah, it's a pretty small percentage of people. Yeah. Okay, it is what it is. And I'm assuming this is something that can be attendance free. Can somebody just have it in a room and somebody comes in front desk, books They go in for their time slot, shut the door, and that's it. Can it be that attendance free?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have developed this software. It's touchscreen-based software that's connected to the unit, so it's all there. We've developed it in such a way that either a practitioner or the individual can use it after a basic kind of orientation to it, of course. But after that, absolutely, it could be a fully touchless offering inside of a wellness center or a spa or anything of the sort. It could also be moderately attended, so the technician, so to speak, can come in and get them set up and then fire them off and then head out of the room. And it can be done even deeper and with the technician really, or the practitioner at that point, really involved. But we wanted to satisfy the opportunity not only for this to be a powerful, healing, transformative, and relaxation device, but something that could also fall into that kind of touchless and almost automated experience to offset. We know that there's a massive growth rate in the wellness space, specifically in mental health, but also just across the board in the spa and wellness space. And what we're seeing is a lot of people are wanting to have touchless options to fill the void of the lack of people that are there to serve those clients. And so that is another thing that we wanted to create it as simple as possible in that way, but then have the ability to take it to advanced levels through the practitioner trainings and further software developments.
So when you say practitioner trainings, what do you mean exactly?
Yeah, so with the purchase of the Z5, we do a basic technician training and orientation.
Right.
Basically just how it all works, some basic ideas of the conceptual framework of why it's effective, as well as how to take a client through the basic level, which would be, say somebody's working the front desk at a spa. They can walk them back there. They know how to work the software. They get the weighted blanket and the VC and everything else. They get them on, they get them set up, they push go, and then they leave the room. Pretty basic level. We call that the technician level, and that just comes with the purchase of the unit. Now, if a facility wanted to do some of the deeper therapeutic work that we've touched on throughout this conversation, that has a whole other training piece that we have developed. So we actually train how to do that work, and we consider it like a facilitated or coaching experience. So there's some skill sets, there's a better understanding, there's a better framework of how to do that. Oftentimes the people that want to do that level are people that are already in that field. So it's not generally there's generally already a foundation of skill sets for somebody that wants to do that work. Not to say that they need them, but that often is the way that goes. And then there's even an advanced practitioner training where we introduce a whole other element of, it's basically where we're using that person's sounds to integrate into the system. So it's an advanced thing. It's still something that we're like developing. It's pretty much ready to go, but we're in kind of the testing phase of it right now. We're doing some beta testing. So this is where we would bring a whole extra piece of equipment, and there's recorded information, and it goes back in and it's fed back into the user's experience. So it's transforming them on an even deeper subconscious level, but it's their own voice, it's their own sound, it's a whole thing.
Oh my God, wow, you got me excited about that.
Great.
And I just love too, you have different tiers of training. That's wonderful. For the more facilitative active role, I'm definitely seeing, a somatic therapist, honestly, even a psychologist, psychotherapist, somebody who's been doing hypnotherapy probably would be great for this, NLP, somebody does something like that. Just even life coaches, just anybody really, just coaching an individual to have a better life experience. They don't really have to change what they're doing, is what I love. They don't have to change their approach per se, but that person's body is just going to be so receptive and just so well tuned to connecting and engaging with that facilitator. And that would just empower that facilitator to a whole other level. And that's really unusual again, too, where that person with their specialized skills doesn't have to change them per se. Right? When they bring on something new, it's just a perfect seamless adjunct. In other words, just add it in and go.
Exactly.
Very, very easy. All right, I would love if we could maybe circle back in a future time on a part 2 here, diving more into kind of the, I don't know, like the business opportunity, kind of like the market, what's happening in the market. I think that would be really helpful for just business owners in particular who are evaluating this. And is there any other questions that you think, or it might be like just we totally skipped over, or just topics that you think before we go, or do you think it was overall pretty thorough?
I'm not noticing any kind of lingering openings in this moment. I thought that was pretty thorough, especially
Yeah.
for that level. And like you said, going into more of the business side or even the deeper dive into some of the advanced moves that we're creating, I think those are great for another time. But I think hopefully by and large, we've covered all the grounds that kind of paint the picture, at least paint the good outline, bring it all together in a certain way. But I'm happy to answer other questions on a future call if anybody comes back with if anybody else exposes a gaping hole that we missed.
Yeah.
Then I'm happy to fill it. So.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. And so if anybody wants to get in touch, then probably best way is going to be with Sean's direct contact information, which several of you will actually, of course, have that directly. And if not, our website over here is SomaLive.com, and you can also reach there as well. And if you do reach out through that website, just mention if you did watch this or watch a part of that, you can just mention either my name or again this sort of interview. And thanks everybody for watching. And again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have some deeper dive questions. And again, appreciate your time, Sean Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
For another one soon.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. All right. Thanks so much.